Good morning. Welcome to the Intentionality Gurus, where Candace Pollock will explore what's going on beneath the iceberg of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Today, she is talking about a deceptively simple tool that helps you see what's actually driving your mood, energy, and mental clarity day to day. The body budget tracker. If you've ever wondered why you feel off, even when nothing's wrong, this one's for you. So, Candace, you must have had ESP like usual and known that, you know, I'm really been off for the last month. So, I need some interesting information as to how I can change all this.
All right. Well, we'll see how interesting this is. It is really fascinating. And, I've seen trackers like this before, but I had to use it for myself in order to get certified in a program. And you know how keen I am on that. But I had to do it in order to get certified. I had to do a final assignment, kind of homework. And I chose to do a case study, and I had some colleagues do the body tracker for 5 weeks. And then I had to take that information and crunch it and so on. Thank you, ChatGPT. Made it a lot easier. And it was absolutely fascinating because one person in particular, somebody I coach, has really been stymied about making some progress on some of his goals. And once we looked at the body tracker, it was really easy to see who was showing up each day to pursue the goals. And it was somebody who had the energy of a wet rag. He should have known it, but he's been operating at that level for so long because of a lot of different factors. So anyway, the body tracker is just something really simple. It doesn't require an app. I suppose there are apps out there, but it has you track basically your mood, your energy, your mental clarity or focus, sleep, your activities, movement, and basically, just those kinds of factors. And for each day, 7 days a week, and you rate them on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being high and 1 being low.
Okay.
And that's all you do. You just notice, you pick a time that you're going to do it reliably because, some people have a little energy slump at 3 that may skew the details and so on, like in the afternoon on work days or something. And the information that came out of it was absolutely fascinating. And then when you take that information in the context of neuroscience, how the brain works with the body, and, for anybody that I can't imagine would be listening who has, scientific degrees in neuroscience. I don't. I have study and, I'm totally fascinated by it. But I'm not a scholar in terms of neuroscience. I'm striving to get much better. It was fascinating in terms of how the body processes these things. All right. So, in terms of your mood, your energy, your clarity, your focus, how much sleep you got, um, the timing of your eating, and your um, activities and so on. Which one do you struggle with most, do you think?
Sleep.
And in what way?
Um, I I just cannot stay asleep, and then I feel tired all day long from it.
Mhm.
Um, and I've tried numerous, things. I have a sleep app. I've used the different, you know, sounds, green noise, pink noise, white noise, um, and not one does anything more than another. I've tried to um, do meditation before I go to sleep. Um, and I just seem to be, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I just feel like I keep waking up thinking that there's something else I need to do, but I can't identify what that is.
And have you ever talked to a doctor about it?
Yes. And the comment was that I probably need more activity during my day. And my first comment would be, I don't have enough time for more activity, but the reality of it is I do have time, and I have to start creating a plan for it, which I haven't yet.
Mhm, mhm. So this man was very similar in that regard. He's a very busy business owner, and he works late, he gets home late, he eats late, he goes to bed late, he doesn't wake up refreshed, and repeat. He doesn't even rinse, he just repeats.
Yep.
And that's 7 days a week because he doesn't have boundaries on his time. He's got other demands, kind of a blended family and lots of other activities to engage in as a business owner. And I'm using him out of the other
Sure.
people. But what we discerned was that the direct correlation between not what he eats as much as when he eats and when he gets to bed and what his, pre sleep protocol is. And the answer is none, and those types of things. So the idea was, for the first time, he could get a real handle on what was getting in his own way, what was, holding him back because, he didn't feel like doing certain things because, his energy was flagging by the evening. He would often do activities in the evening, business meetings and those kind of taking people out to dinner, again, eating late and so on, sometimes with wine, which, can disrupt the sleep cycle, and so on. And when we um, went through the charts, the part that really was riveting for him was getting, he felt like he needed to work late because cash flow in his business is always tight. All
Yeah.
right. So we were able to take the spotlight and put it on, why is this occurring? Why are you getting home late? Well, because I have to work late. Why do you have to work late? Well, because of this. Why do you have to, do this and so on? That comes from the five whys, from the Toyota way. And he was able to see that if he could, then he wasn't getting enough exercise. He was getting like zero exercise. He wasn't even walking the dog. All right.
Okay.
He was trying to use that as an excuse, that the dog had to go out and so on. But he was the one that was not doing it. Everybody else was in the family. But what we were able to discern, because this is a person I coach, is that prior to this, we had been trying um, trial and error approaches on, well, let's do this. Let's make sure that you have like something on your phone to remind you to sit down for dinner. None of those things lasted for long. But in this instance, what we realized that there was a keystone habit. Have you ever heard that phrase before?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so for anybody that hasn't heard it, it's a habit that tends to set in motion a series of other habits, either set them up beneficially or undermine them. So this was a keystone habit that happened to be undermining him. And the keystone habit was thinking he had to work late, was working late. If he got home on time, and he did get home on time to time, most of the time he did not, then he tended to eat on time, he tended to go to bed earlier, and things were better. But he wasn't feeling it in his daily existence. And this is where the tracker is such a handy tool. It can be low tech and could be nothing, nothing more than just drawing a little graph and putting things in and filling them out as you go through the week, and then maybe tossing them out if you wanted to. But when he realized it was the working late that was doing him in, then we took the spotlight in the coaching to focus on how do we get you home on time, boundaries, all of these different areas that were coming to bear. So what's showing up for you in hearing that?
Well, so I know what my biggest issue is, I think, after listening to you, is with my sleep. And that is, I was sleeping much better before my husband um, started working a couple of years ago. And he had to get up between 4 and 4:30.
Hmm.
And so being the dutiful wife that I am, I would get up at 4:30 with him, and help him prepare to go to work. When I say that, for those of you listening, my husband is so colorblind that if I didn't help lay out his clothes, he would look worse than Bozo the Clown. So, trying to be
Not
the
that there's anything wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that. Well, when he went to work this morning, he looked more like Albert Einstein too. So it was like, hey, let me help you out here. But that's when my sleep cycle got worse. And then the last 4 months, he's been off of work, but I've still been getting up between 4 and 4:30. And I've created my cycle around him rather than around me. And I'm realizing just in a little bit that you were saying about your client, I need to take care of me. I need to figure out, do I really have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning with him? And the reality is, no, I could, grab his clothes the night before, put him on the chair, and I could sleep through his routine. And that
Well,
probably
and sleep is such an important factor in our lives. I mean, it impacts our risk for, early senility,
yeah,
all of the brain deterioration things. It is basically an element in some other diseases, and so on. So if we're not getting proper sleep according to our particular circadian rhythm, some people are early birds, some people are, night owls. My mother used to be able to drink coffee at the 11 o'clock news and go to sleep. But, she stayed up that late and was going to stay up later. I, on the other hand, am an early bird. I always have been. And, whether I set the alarm or not. And I sometimes can go late into the evening, but it's never been my preference. So to work against type is maybe one of the factors. So have you ever done one of those tests to find out what your natural circadian rhythm is, not the one that you're working against?
no,
Yeah, so
I
that
didn't
might
know
be
that it
something
was one.
interesting to do. Yeah, you can do that. And then I happen to have an Aura ring, but any of those kinds of trackers that tell me when I'm sleeping, whether which parts have the deep sleep, the REM sleep, and those kinds of things. So then I can see, oh, this may have disrupted that. Maybe I won't do that. It's late in the day, would disrupt my sleep. Eating, those kinds of patterns. If they're well, and half-life of caffeine. How many things have caffeine in it, and the half-life of caffeine can be anywhere between 6 and 8 hours. So if you have a late afternoon coffee or something to get a little energy boost, you could be setting things up, the dominoes up, so that you're not getting sleep. That's not my area. I'm just fascinated by it, but
Right.
also that how integral these things are, or integral. I think it's tomato, tomato. I've always pronounced it integral. But lately I've been in a webinar with some Canadians, and they say integral. I don't know if it's regional or not. But the point here is to, we have that hidden iceberg of all those things that are going on in our body. And I think we underestimate how much our thoughts are impacting our body, our heart rate, if we have racing thoughts and those kinds of things, we can have racing heart, but also how much our body impacts, all the other things that are going on. So, has the doctor ever recommended a sleep study or something?
So I had a sleep study a couple years back. And it was interesting because two reports came out of it. So even the doctor isn't sure, hey, which report is right. Um, One said I didn't go into REM sleep at all. And the funny part was that when I woke up that morning, I actually wrote out what I could remember of my dreams. But the other one showed that I did have a REM sleep, REM period.
Mhm.
So, you know, it didn't give me all the data that we really needed. One of the things, though, that he came up with is that because my husband was getting up so early in the morning, he was going to sleep earlier at night. For some reason, even when
Uh,
I'm tired, I don't want to go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night. Okay.
mhm.
And so I was pushing myself to stay awake till 10 or 11 and then go to sleep. And the only thing that he could come up with is that I had pushed myself beyond the point of being tired. And yes, I fell right to sleep, but my body, automatically thought that it was time to get up. And his recommendation was, hey, go to sleep at 8 o'clock. Maybe you'll get your 8 hours of sleep, even if you're waking up at 4:30 in the morning.
Well, and I think the pressure to get 8 hours of sleep can undermine us as well.
Mhm.
Even if you just got another hour.
Yeah.
I don't tend to sleep 8 hours. I sleep less than that, but I do feel refreshed. And, but there are times when I need to get a certain number of hours, a minimum number at least. And I wear an eye mask. And sometimes I'll even put the little uh, ear, canceling things
Yeah.
in my ears. And those are the most restful things. Now, I have creatures in the house, not people,
Yeah.
but, animals, and they tend to think I'm, carpeting or furniture that they can walk around on. So, that is a little disruptive. I suppose I could, keep them out of the room, but, by shutting the door, but they would be scratching at the door. So I've learned that lesson. So, while we're focusing on sleep, it's going to be part of a cascade of other things because that's just one of these elements. So in terms of your mood, how does your mood show up as a rule?
um, so for the past 4 months, my mood has, um, I fake it a lot, um, because I feel exhausted all the time. Um, and
And you're eating, are you eating nutritional food or are
so
you just eating for the sake of,
no,
eating?
so the interesting part is, I had to go on a special medication, for my weight, and I have no appetite. And I'm eating when I eat what is nutritional rather than just eating to eat something.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so in theory, I'm eating better, but I'm eating much less than I've ever eaten in my whole life.
Good, good, good. So that at least that's one factor. All right. And then in terms of your energy, we kind of touched on that. And you said no exercise.
No, I am exercising.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I won't, my brain gets mad at me when I don't exercise. So
Good, good.
if I
That's
say,
what it's supposed to do. It's supposed
yeah,
to say something's wrong here.
exactly. I mean, like we're out of town and last night, you know, I probably could have gone down to the gym and either walked the treadmill or rode the bike down there. But it was like I made excuses. That means I have to throw something else on. I've got to go downstairs, I'm going to come back up here. Rich is going to be asleep. And it was like, I could tell it's one excuse after another, but I could have done it. This morning, I I felt like I weighed 100 pounds more because I hadn't exercised.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, today,
There's a phrase from a book I read, and it talks about making the to-dos, the tasks, the musts, so small that it boils down to it's easy to do and it's easy not to do. You choose.
yeah,
And there's something about phrasing it that way that since I've been using that approach, that I always do it even though I've come to that fork in the road where like, oh, I don't really feel like it. And then I realize, oh, it's easy to do and it's easy not to do. And somehow that not doing it is less attractive just by going through that process.
yeah,
Well, with this guy, what we discovered was that exercise was the weakest thing. And it isn't just body that's signaling, that it's tired. The brain is part of the equation. And so what we ultimately came up with, he would self-soothe with food. When he did eat late, he would eat, things and that were probably not in his best interest, that took a long time to metabolize and so on. Again, he was eating late. So um, did you know we have these things called glymph glands? G-L, wait, G lymph. I can't remember how to spell it. G-L-Y
MPH.
P-H
Yep.
uh, glands. And they basically clean our brain while we're asleep. Just think of like little street um,
Sweepers,
things that
buster.
come along
Yep.
and scrub the street.
Yep.
And take away, the little pieces, parts of cells and stuff. I don't know all of that in a technical perspective. But he wasn't getting that opportunity. When we eat late, that is impaired. And so that may be some of the factors that are, adding to some of the stuff that ultimately leads to early senility and so on. But what we ultimately came up with, he wanted to exercise. He knew he needed to. He was gaining weight. He was just crabby. He would have emotional outbursts. He was going back to his old growly bear kinds of personality before some other enlightening activity that he had gone through. And, he was chalking all of this up as a mindset problem. And yes, part of it was mindset, but part of it is just this physiology and so on. And so you can be thinking about having a ritual at night, dimming the lights, because, the normally when we were anchored to the sunrise and sunset, our melatonin would be adjusted by the light from the sun.
Right.
Well, with artificial light, we're not, anchoring to the sun so much and so on. And so you could dim the lights. Some people use a red light after a certain time. I have my computer set so my light on my computer, if I'm working on it, will dim at a certain time because that otherwise that can impair the melatonin building up. So in this conversation today, the point I wanted to emphasize is that we can just do a simple low-tech tracking of these things and just start noticing patterns. And what we ultimately came up with this guy was figuring out something that would get him out of the office on time. And we defined on time as no later than 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Normally he would have stayed to 7 or 8 or 9 and not get home. And so it wasn't, having prepared meals come in early. It wasn't any of that. And the idea is he might join a pickleball league. He didn't have to do it every night. He just needed to do it at least 3 nights a week to kind of get into the swing of things. The league would require him to show up. He's a very social guy, just loves those things and do it with his friends. And that might be a way just to change that one little factor on the Rubik's Cube, get that analogy, and maybe that would make the other things fall into place. So what might that be for you?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I do on a regular basis, except when I'm not at home, I have a routine for riding my stationary bike. I have a routine for exercising my arms because I know I have about 6 more months to get my arm in shape. Um, but the exercises I think will continue because they feel good. They're not hard to do, and um, it makes me feel good.
Mhm.
My One of the other things that I did about 30 days ago was I changed my recording schedule and also my coaching schedule. And I've made it very deliberate what my hours are and when my cutoff time is. Which
Congratulations.
has I've lost um, a couple of shows because of it. And my first reaction was, oh, I got to go back to longer hours. And then I thought, I'm I'm not helping myself doing that.
Right.
But even though I've changed it in my mind, I still have this feeling maybe I should be doing more when I know that more is not going to make me any better than I am right now. So I'm trying to talk myself down from that and, be the best you can be the hours that you've chosen to work.
Well, I read something recently that sometimes what you say no to, we have 168 hours a week, every single one of us. And that's, some of it's supposed to be spent sleeping and, there's eating and doing all the things that we need to do and many of the things we want to do. But when we add something new to our plate, we need to know that it's at the expense of something else. And we can decide what that will be, what we consciously are going to, kick to the curb because it's just not serving us. And maybe that would be, any shows after X period of time because something's got to go. I mean,
Yeah.
there's only 168. We can't, fill a gallon bucket with a gallon and a half of water, right? Same thing with our time, but that's not how we think. We think we should do more. We think we should put that extra half gallon in there. So,
Well,
all
and the
right.
sad part is we see other people putting all that extra time in, and we believe a lot of things that they are saying, which maybe isn't true. I have another friend who does very similar work that I do, and she works 7 days a week, about 6 to 7 hours a day. And I asked her, how do you do it? You have grandchildren, you have children, you have your husband. I said, when is there time for you? And she said, oh, that'll come. And it's like,
Right. She has
well,
grandchildren. When is it going to come?
yeah, well, and that's what I said. I said, I don't have grandchildren, but I have, I have a husband and two sons, and I have friends, and I have to juggle sometimes. Hey, I'm not going to talk to my son now because I haven't talked to this friend in a while, and I want to keep that connection. And like you said, there's only so many hours in a day and a week to do certain things, and sometimes I just have to trade one thing off for another.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And in the context of, your values and priorities. I mean, it's all anchoring to that. So that's where I think the body tracker can help us kind of just get in touch with, what's so, and then you can see any patterns and decide what may need to change. So it was a fascinating case study as far as I was concerned. And the people that were in it enjoyed it as well. So there.
So we can create our own body tracker, but
Yep.
there may be some online that our listeners will find, and whatever helps you is important. I use a tracker um, for it is for dieting, but I don't use it for dieting. I use it to keep me on track so that I can go back and see that I've eaten the right things, or if I'm feeling down today, what did I eat yesterday that may have contributed to that?
Mhm,
And I will
mhm.
tell you, sugar is
A
my biggest
killer.
counter.
Yep. Yep.
And most people say, oh, sugar, oh, it spikes me up. And for me, the next day, I just feel terrible. Um,
Mhm.
and that's really upsetting my husband because he loves sugar. So he
Well,
eats,
that's the important part, though. By tracking, you
yep,
got to see a pattern. And
yep,
by seeing a pattern, then you have a fork in the road to make a choice. And the choice, you can always go back to the original choice or, continue on the new path.
exactly. Well, we want to thank everybody for spending their time with us today, whether it's actually really today or in the future. And the next time on the Intentionality Gurus, we will explore why some habits stick and others slip away, especially when your brain is trying to keep you safe. I want you all to think about that. And until then, be intentional, be gentle with your energy. Your body is your best ally, so listen to it.
Thank you,
Thank you
Karen.
so much. Talk to you soon. Bye bye now.